Right, well, the BRICS Business Forum kicks off today under the theme, Making Accelerated Growth and Sustainable Development a Reality. The forum will involve a number of key panel discussions, and these will include a focus on trade and investment, a just energy transition, as well as helping to boost the fortunes of small businesses, among other issues. The BRICS Business Forum will be the last driven business activity in what's been an eventful August calendar of events before the Heads of State meeting, which starts later this afternoon. But let's cross live now to our very own Nompumelelo Siziba to give us a sense of what we can expect from this morning's proceedings. Nompu, over to you.
Thanks very much, Naledi, for that wonderful introduction. As you say, a lot is going on today. It's the BRICS Business Forum that's taking place. This after a number of activities in the preceding days where the BRICS Business Council members from across all the countries of the BRICS nations have been engaging on a number of so-called work streams, which basically means looking at different sectors and how they can best work together in order to better invest in each other's countries and, do trade with each other and so on and so forth. Well, for more on this, I'm joined in studio by Stavros Nicolaou. He is a member of the BRICS Business Council of the South African chapter. Stavros, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
It's been a very busy couple of weeks for you, but the big question, of course, for South Africans watching at home is, does BRICS really work for us, especially the BRICS Business Council?
Firstly, thanks very much for having me in studio. It has indeed been a busy few weeks. Preceding the summit was a number of inward buying missions. And that goes to the core of the question you've asked me. Is BRICS working for the average South African? And let me respond as follows. I think firstly, the BRICS formation represents 42% of the world's population. But importantly, in business terms, and for the average person, what does that mean economically? And BRICS presently occupies 32% of global GDP. That's in purchase power parity terms. To put that in some perspective, it's slightly larger than the G7 formation. So it provides South African businesses with scale and mass and very big markets. And that's an important element. So now let me reflect on these inward buying missions, because if one analyzes our trade patterns with the four BRIC countries, South Africa in every instance runs a trade deficit. As you would expect, because these are much bigger economies, they're more industrialized, and China's number 2, India 5, and Brazil 8 in terms of economic size globally. So it's not unnatural or unusual that we would run a trade deficit. But what is important is that we start bridging some of those trade deficits. Now, we're never going to turn them into a surplus, not with the size of economy that we've got. But last week, one of those inward buying missions, the Chinese inward buying missions, secured deals for 40 billion rand worth of South African produced products to be exported to China. So that's how we've got to look at the platform that BRICS provides to us. Does it give us access to these type of opportunities? And I think last week's example is a very good one. And our trade has grown with BRICS. If I take a period 2017 to 2021, South Africa's trade with BRICS has grown by 44%. So there's no doubt that in trade terms it has grown. But now we've got to analyze those opportunities, like I said, for buying missions, for export orientation, and that's how we need to start looking at BRICS. So I would have to say that in the short term, it's worked up to a certain point, but now we know we need to kick on and accelerate from there with more of these buying missions.
So opportunity is one thing in terms of being able to export to other BRICS countries, but then capacity is another. We have noted that the manufacturing sector has actually been shrinking over the past number of years in the local economy. So what needs to be done to ensure that more manufacturing is incentivized? Is that actually happening? Because we know government has had lots of incentive schemes for years, and yet we've seen manufacturing actually declining.
Yep. So our manufacturing has become uncompetitive in many sectors for a whole host of reasons. However, there are sectors, like my sector that I come from, Aspen and pharmaceutical sector, we've proven to be a globally competitive producer. We produce all sorts of general anesthetics, and we proved that we could produce vaccines under contract. So we have got those pockets of excellence in South Africa. But we need to address the headwinds and the localization policies in our country. Now, what do I mean by that? It's no good going on an aggressive growth path, but there's an energy constraint or an infrastructure constraint. So what gives me a lot of confidence and hope for the future is that government doesn't have capacity to do a lot of these things. We have recently, through Business for South Africa, forged a partnership with government that addresses three what we call disenablers. So it's energy, infrastructure, crime and corruption. And private sector is putting pro bono resources into addressing those capacity constraints, because we can go on an aggressive manufacturing strategy and a localization strategy, but if we don't have basic infrastructure to move these products around, or if we can't even move our mining and minerals and commodities, which are our bread and butter, then we can never get into any growth trajectory that's going to be satisfactory. So two things: let's address the headwinds. We're not going to fix them immediately, but we need incremental, iterative progress in that regard. And then the second thing is we need a consistent localization policy. Our local procurement policy, the regulations have just been suspended recently. Now, sort of 28 years on, because the Preferential Procurement Framework Act was incepted in 1996. It's how far back. Okay. It's really not good form that we don't have a consistent set of procurement rules that we apply in order to boost localization, local capacity. There's no better transformer of any economy, and nothing that gives you a better multiplier effect back into an economy than if you're able to effectively leverage local volumes to create local capacities for export orientation. And we need to fix that policy.
Stavros, thank you very much for speaking to us here at the SABC. That was Stavros Nicolaou. He is a member of the BRICS Business Council of the South African chapter, just giving us his take on the summit, and he believes that the engagements have been very positive indeed. And of course, Naledi, the BRICS Business Forum is in full swing at the moment, where a number of panel discussions will be taking place. A little bit later, we will, of course, then have the BRICS Head of States meeting, which begins really after 4 p.m. thereabouts. The BRICS Business Council will be handing over a report of all their thoughts and their deliberations to the heads of state for them to then consider, and hopefully to be able to formulate some policy which better enables all the BRICS nations to better trade and invest with each other. It's back to you in studio.